Trustee Corvalon, can you hear us?
Yep, I do hear you.
Thank you.
I just hit. Hello? Ah, there we go.
That pizza's for you, by the way.
I know. Thank you very much.
We want to see you eat and talk at the same time.
Oh, no, I can't. My wife would kill me right now. She said, whatever you do, don't eat food and get it on your shirt before you got to go there. So I've been not eating very much until after everything was done the last day or two.
That's good.
So it's the safest way because if I go back, she'll look at my shirts and be like, you got stains on them. I hope the heck you didn't
Yeah,
wear
just-
that thing.
Just
I'm
turn
like,
it around.
yeah, I had strict directions when I came here in my suitcase. These outfits go with this and this. Because I'm a casual type of guy, to be honest with you. I'm not,
You're not colorblind, are you?
no.
How are you doing with no air?
Yesterday, I did not drink enough. You know, I flew in, I got up early in the morning. I drank a lot of coffee, which dehydrates you to begin with,
Oh, yeah.
and didn't drink a lot of water. And when I came up yesterday, I had a slight headache. I didn't know if it was sinuses or not. But last night I went back and drank a ton of water. And today, now granted, it just makes me instill in myself that I'm a little out of shape more than I thought I was too. That when I might take a deep breath a little more when I go up the stairs, but that's something that I understand. Well, that's what I'm thinking. If by the time I go back to Pennsylvania and them little mountains, I'll be able to climb like a billy goat up those things and not, because this year I was like,
You'll sleep well, too.
the only problem with sleep until I get adjusted to the time
Yeah.
is I was so used to getting up at 5:30 in the morning for the last couple of weeks. At 3:30, I looked at my clock and I was wide awake and I was like, why?
Not a good thing.
Why?
Yeah, right.
Because I was the 2-hour time span difference for me. And I was like, please let me go back to sleep. Please let me go to sleep.
I do it all the time. I go back and forth. It's hard to. It's
From
hard.
the East Coast?
Mm-hmm.
Now, where do you go to the East Coast?
Generally, New York.
New York?
Yeah. And South Florida sometimes.
Okay.
But it's yeah, I use the CPAP and it really shows up on when you look at the charts over time. The doctor will say, "What happened?" Oh, you got home from a trip.
I know my wife would probably want me to use the CPAP. I haven't broken down and did it yet.
Well,
I snore quite profusely.
it doesn't bother you.
No, the only thing I could tell when she had a bad night because I have a sore throat in the morning. I'm like, ooh, I must have snored a lot last night.
If I fall asleep on the airplane, generally all the seats are empty around me.
Well, do we have to start with the time
Yes,
and all that?
this is a special BOT meeting, so you'll need to call to order, roll call, and then you can move into your.
And are you taking roll? Macy's not here, right?
Macy is not here, so I will handle that for you.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to the special meeting of the BOT. It's, on December 1st, 2022, to talk with Daniel or Dan, what do you prefer?
Dan
Gledhill?
Gledhill.
Gledhill, okay.
You didn't put an N in there, so I'm pretty impressed. Most
Good.
people say Glen Hill. And I'm like, there's no N in there. Please, it's Gledhill.
Well, thanks. So we're talking with Dan Gledhill.
Yes, sir.
At 7:05, and we are underway. So can you take the roll, please, Miranda?
Yes, Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor
Here.
Pro Tem Mahold,
Here.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Here.
Trustee Blakemore,
Here.
Trustee Sterling,
Here.
Trustee Severs,
Here.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Here.
Welcome, everybody. And Dan, just want to thank you, first of all, for, all the effort flying out here and everything that went through the interview process, but flying out here and, hopping up to high altitude and hit the ground running yesterday with tests and then meetings with town staff heads and department heads and local police and fire department. And so we appreciate. And then today with meeting the public and now meeting with us. I appreciate your endurance for at least the last 2 days.
I thank you for the
Glad to
opportunity.
have you here. So can we just jump into questions or is there something?
You can.
I didn't
jump-
look, I didn't look to see if there's an agenda. other than
Yeah,
question.
no, you can jump right into your questions.
Okay, thanks. So, we've read your resume. We appreciate you, you know, your resume and what we read. And just what would you tell us about yourself above and beyond what's in your resume?
Beyond my resume?
Yeah.
I was born in Pennsylvania. I'll start there. I was born up there, being a police officer there in 1994. I worked there up until 2000. Me and my family went on a trip to Carolina Beach, and my buddies were like, "Move down here with us," and I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" You know, it was something different. It was a change. So I moved down there. I became a police officer down there. I worked at the university for about 6 months down there. It was in Durham, North Carolina. While there, me and my wife were living in Morrisville, so we were driving back and forth, and we were able to buy a house. I didn't even know where it was. Come to find out, it was about almost an hour's drive when you hit traffic and stuff. So I moved up to Morrisville. I'd made some connections while there. We moved and lived in an apartment before there, so I knew the people there. They gave me free rent for working there as a maintenance guy. So I lived there. We bought a house up in Andrew, North Carolina, which is about 45 minutes southeast of Raleigh, North Carolina, between Raleigh and Fayetteville, if that makes sense. I went to Morrisville. I was there for 2.5 years. Loved working there. I was there till 2003. And then I moved to the small town of Holly Springs, which was up Highway 55, and they were one of the first departments in the area to give take-home cars. So it was a win-win for me. It was saved me 20 minutes of drive time, plus it was their car I was driving back and forth and their gas. The pay wasn't the best in the world, but there was benefits to go with that. So I went to there. While at Morrisville, I also was on their SWAT team there for 2 years. I did a lot of traffic there. That's what Morrisville was a small town. Went to Holly Springs. I spent 3 years on the road as a patrol officer. And in 2006, I was promoted to detective. Our detectives unit specifically was at that time 2 people. It was myself and another detective. We had 20 officers in the police department at that time. So it was a small department, and we didn't have a lot of assets. I spent almost 8.5 years there. Strictly, I focused on narcotics and any major incidents that come up. Holly Springs was really infused with a bad crack cocaine problem, and we had a lot of liquor houses. The town didn't wake up till right around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and that's when it broke loose. That's when everybody would come out. So while doing narcotics there, the chief tasked me with starting a SWAT team there. I was able to pick 8 of the people in the department. We had no money. Chief goes, "Hey, I want you to start a team, but by the way, you don't have any money." So I was able to talk my guys into buying a little extra ammo per month. So we were buying our own ammo in the department and give us a box. And we'd buy a box just to make sure we were trained up. We actually had T-shirts that policed, and we turned them around backwards. I went to military surplus and got some expired helmets and vests and stuff, anything to help us out. And we did that for almost 2 years until we finally started getting some money. We did quite a few entries. The way I worked in Holly Springs, we would go into the communities, first let them know we were there. I'd go in there and give them warnings a lot of times. "Listen, knock it off. Here's my business card." We'd get small complaints. And we weren't dealing with it was mostly cocaine and hard drugs. Marijuana stuff, we usually did knock and talks on the house. We'd knock on the doors and do soft talks to them, and either tell them to, knock off, or we were coming back, which made it nice if I did have to go back and do an entry with my SWAT team. I could take a nice picture of my business card there that I had that in my reports, and the reports build up that I did everything possible to help them. But like I explained to them while we came back, we came because of community complaints. I didn't just go pick places out. We basically would look at the places we were having problems with, and we'd literally take guys in there and we'd camp out for an entire week and say, "This is our house." We'd have to maybe arrest a couple people the first day, but after that, they got the hint. Just don't don't do it. Because we were having a small town. We were averaging 2 or 3 murders a year. And it was quite painful to see the addiction problem too and what they were doing to the users in the community. 2007, I started a federal investigation. I got brought on with HSI strictly as for federal prosecution and large-scale narcotics, basically cartels. We did no immigration, nothing like that. We had nothing to do with that. We strictly worked with drugs and drugs being infused into the community. And at the time, with the guns and drugs that were in the community, it was a lot easier to prosecute under the federal side. It had a lot more bite to it than the state side. And, you know, when you start putting people away for 10 years, it tends to change people's minds. I started the federal investigation in Holly Springs, and we ran that for almost 4 years. I worked with local sheriff's departments and our State Bureau of Investigations. That investigation was directly run by myself and the chief of police because we also had a corruption problem within the police department. We later on found out several officers were talking through phone. We call pen registry. So every time you make a phone call, I would get who you were calling to, how long you talked to them, and all that stuff, which I had written the orders for all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a wake-up call when you get one of those pen registries and the phone numbers from the next day, and one of your officers' phone numbers is on it. So it became a real nightmare. It was one of probably the worst 4 years of my life when you're wiring up your chief of police, who was also corrupt, and you're debriefing these people, and you're finding out that the people you were working with you couldn't trust. And we knew that kind of going in because we were having some problems with the reason myself and my chief compartmentalized it is all information that was being divvied out was only between me and him, and it kind of kept, no one else knew what was going on. So by putting up technology and poll cameras, we found out a lot of stuff that we had no idea was going on. We did that for 4 years. I found out after 4 years truly what politics and big government does and how things don't work out the way you thought they were going to work out and people walk away scot-free. So it left a pretty big sour taste in my mouth. I did a lot of undercover in those years, and it really tasked hard on my family and my family life, especially when you're walking around a town and you're going out with your wife and kids, and they have to know your fake name and not your real name. So 2014, I had an opportunity at that time to put in for a school resource officer, which even the chief, if you asked him today, was like, what in God's name are we going to stick a narcotics agent into a high school of 2,000 kids who is a little rough around the edges and not the most politically correct person in the world all the time. I spent from 2014 until 2018 in the schools. And I can honestly, I was speaking to a young lady in the audience. That was probably the most important work I've ever done in my entire career in law enforcement. I was involved in all the football games, drama. I walked a lot in the school, and it was a 3-story school, pretty big campus. In those years, I started a program called, myself and my other officer started a program. It was called Breaking Bread with Fishing Kids, where we identified at-risk youth. And, you know, SROs are usually off in the summertime. We would do a fishing program in the summertime with the kids. And once again, we started a program and we found we didn't have any money for, so we were scrambling. The great people at Bass Pro and Cabela's, I found out, they do a take-back program for fishing poles to trade in. You can take your poles there. And they were more than happy to provide us with all the fishing poles and some of the gifts that we did. And what we'd do is we'd fish with the kids, not in uniform. We'd fish with them, and we had T-shirts made up with our logo and a bass on it. And we'd wear blue jeans and hats, and every kid got a shirt there for free. They didn't have to pay for a dime. We provided all the services to them. We started that with just the high school kids, and it kind of went off faster than what we thought. And you had kids coming into the park that didn't even go to school there and sign up, but how do you turn them away? It got to the point where we were doing 80 kids at a time with 5 and 6 officers. I mean, it was out of control. And we were feeding them at that time, and Chick-fil-A was wonderful, and some of the local businesses were willing to put in the food, because it's amazing when you sit there and eat food with kids and they get to talk with you and fish with you, the relationships you can build with them. That program is still going on to this day. In fact, we actually do it 2 days a week now, and we go from even younger kids, like 6 and up, which is kind of a nightmare when you got little kids throwing around fishing poles. And I can honestly say a few times some hooks have caught in people's ears and hands, but it's amazing how in the last 6 years we've seen kids progress through that, and we've got teenagers that are coming back and helping with the program that have went through it. And it just kind of took off. It was a great program. And we learned that at the school. One thing we learned, 2,000 kids, when you go to a football game or a drama class, you're not only touching that kid that is there with you, but their parents are on the sidelines. They're in the stands, their grandparents. And when they see you having a relationship with them kids, it makes it a lot easier to work with things in the world, especially with what's going on now. You can find a lot more information. I learned that just at the school. It's amazing what a peanut butter and jelly sandwich will do for a kid. I would teach classes at the high school to the kids, drug and alcohol classes, civics classes. I'd actually teach them what to do and what not to do with a police officer, and what was legal and what was not legal. So I know some of the patrol officers hated me for it, but you know what? If you're doing the right thing, who cares? I also started, one of my famous lines with the kids was, snitches don't get stitches. Snitches get rewards. It's amazing what a Chick-fil-A gift card will do for a kid, just to give you information. It was my theory with the kids, and it would cost a little extra money, and my chief was wonderful enough that I offered up to everybody in the school, tell me who's got a gun, I'll give you $300 cash, no questions asked. It wasn't to rat people out or put people in jail, it was safety. That's all it was. And that's what my whole time at the school was about, was keeping the kids safe. I'd play this crazy song, My House. I'd do pep rallies for them and do some stupid stuff that everybody'd laugh about. But they appreciated it. And, you know, that's one thing you've got to be involved with the kids. And that's something that just breeds itself. I knew more about those kids than a lot of parents knew, because they were willing to come in and talk to me about getting a charge they got in some of their town, and what do you got to do? Or they told me some stuff. I just put my hands over my ears and went, la, 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 I don't want to hear this, because it was some crazy stuff. But I would feed them. My wife was wonderful enough. We'd provide clothing for kids, because I was in a predominantly rich town where a lot of money, but what people see is the outside, and they don't see what's on the inside. And that there's a lot of kids there that don't have money, or there's a lot of parents that have a lot of money that give their kids BMWs, but have nothing to do with them in their lives. And they just throw money at them, which turns into problems. A funny story was, I bought a kid a pair of, I thought they were cool Brooks. They were cool Brooks shoes. I mean, I liked them. I mean, I like Brooks shoes. I run with them. I think they're wonderful. Come to find out, they're not the coolest thing in the world for a 16-year-old kid to wear. And I've never been so embarrassed in my life when he says, I can't wear them. What, man, I spent some money on them. No, I'm not wearing those things. I'm like, what do you want? So we actually went back to the store and I let him pick it out. I learned a lot. Like I said, I learned a lot that I'm old, and there's stuff that I say that doesn't mean the same thing as what they mean now. COVID hit in 2018? That time is 2018. So school shuts down. We had a chief that went out, our chief retired, and the interim chief, who actually I trained at the time growing up, asked me to come back to our unit, which was a narcotics unit with a bunch of young guys, and our investigation unit, which we have I have 3 officers under me in our narcotics unit, but then we have 6 in our general investigations unit. And my unit is like a catch-all unit. We don't do just narcotics, so if they're having problems in the neighborhoods or break-ins or stuff like that, we come out in plain clothes, or if there's major incidents or stuff. And plus, I'd been doing some work with our investigations. I had some skills of interrogation and interview techniques that I was pretty good at over the years. So they asked me to come help on a homicide, which we'd had through domestic violence. where we didn't have a body, and we were literally 4 months behind the investigation because the guy had been basically hiding it and texting. The terrible thing with cell phones nowadays is people don't talk on the phone anymore. So it's easy to get away with stuff for 4 months. And we look at it today and go, how in God's name did a parent not know? But it was always excuses and fake photos and all that stuff. So I went back to that unit. In
Daniel?
18. Yes. Oh,
Hi.
am I hearing something from above?
It's me. It's over here. We're in the virtual world.
Okay.
Hey, Daniel, we have 21 questions to get through, and we will give you the ability to kind of get onto some of these projects. The experiences that you've had throughout your career. I was wondering if we might be able to move on to the next questions, because a lot of these questions are going to pull out your experiences. But we've also got 21 to get through, so
Let's
if that's
go.
okay. All right, awesome. Thank
roll
you
the
so
gamut.
much.
Thanks, Nicole. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, we were just wondering, Officer Gledhill, what your particular experience or experiences led you into law enforcement to begin with in the first place.
You know, I was a bad kid. I'll be honest with you. I had a really good football coach. My father passed away when I was a senior in high school. My teachers, if you were to ask them today what kind of person they were, they would have said he's a piece of garbage. I wasn't a bad kid. I just was very hyper. And my brothers and sisters are all older than me, so I really didn't have it. It was just me and my parents. But I had a strong coach that taught me a lesson on work. I went to college, never thought I was going to be a lawyer. I literally was going to college for pre-law with a major in history. I liked American history. I took a criminology class, and I fell in love with it. And then some other things happened in my life, and my wife got pregnant, and, I said, you know what? I'll finish up at a later date. And I literally dropped out with 19 credits to go, which is, I look back now and I go, I wish I'd had somebody there to slap me in the side of the head and say, don't do it. But you know what? I've been married to that woman for 28 years. I've raised 4 kids with her. I recently called my college back up, and I'm finishing my degree with an internship. They said all I have to do is wherever I'm working, write an 8-page paper, and I literally will walk next spring with my bachelor's degree.
Great.
So that's where I got into law enforcement. That's how it transpired. And I liked law enforcement because it challenged me. I'm not the most. My guys, I got some smart guys on my team that can write great reports, and they're very articulate in how they write. I'm not one of those guys. So I'm just a worker. I like to get things done, and I just can't stand sitting still. And that's why I do what I do.
Great. Thanks so much.
Jesse? Jesse, if you're talking, you might be muted.
Hey guys, I'm listening in. I'm driving there, but I have a crying 4-year-old in the car. If you guys could,
you're
somebody could ask my question for me,
No
and
problem.
then I'll be there in probably less than 10 minutes.
There's pizza here, Jesse.
sure.
Hurry up.
Okay,
Tell Mary
okay.
she can have a piece.
I'll speed up. All right, thanks.
So why do you want to be the Netherlands police chief? And what do you bring to this position that you would not get, that we would not get from another candidate or from the Boulder County Sheriff's Office?
I see the small town here, and I see great things that can be done in a small community that I can't do anymore in a large community. The community policing aspect, and especially with the way law enforcement is now, we always get bad press and stuff, and that's partially our own fault for not being out there more in the public and making good press for ourselves. We just sit back and ride around in police cars, some of it, and bad things happen and we make bad press for ourselves. I think with this community, man, it's a tinder. I hate to say tinderbox. I know you guys have fires up here, but it's a tinderbox for programs in a small community that can be implemented with not that much money, because you're sitting on a gold mine. I mean, just look around where you are. I mean, it's gorgeous. You have streams, reservoirs. I mean, you've got mountains. I mean, and you've got the small town feel. It's just exciting to be able to implement an agency or a police department with the community aspect that, you know, I truly believe that others would take notice and start stealing stuff from us. There's good things that can happen. Now it takes a buy-in from you guys as the Board of Trustees, but it also takes a buy-in from the town. But that's from the town, we have to step forward with that buy-in. The town's just not going to welcome us with open arms. They've got, talk is cheap. And if you're not out there meeting people, one thing I did at the school was I tried to know everybody. And that was my main goal. And when somebody walked by me, I said hello, because you never knew when that person walked by if they weren't looking at you or they didn't say if something was going on. And you could tell real fast by saying hello to somebody whether they're really ticked off that day, which if they are, you ask questions. And that's the same thing you can do in a small community like this. I mean, you're talking 1,500 people. There's no reason why you can't get out and know every business. The gentleman I met tonight, I'm sorry, I met so many people's names. He takes the flag down. Invited me up to his house to have coffee and meet all the old timers. You know, that's the things that there's nothing wrong with an officer, and I would not have a problem with my officer. In fact, I'd be ticked off if they weren't going out and meeting the people and sitting on the front porch and talking once in a while. You've got a town that's a mile by a mile. And I'm speculating, I'm guessing on the size.
1.5 square miles.
1.5 square miles. Like literally, I know myself, exercise is not a bad thing, you know? And for officers, it's not a bad thing. And by walking around, I'm not saying take the cars away because it's cold and get windy out there. And sometimes you got to get warm. But however, there's nothing wrong with stopping in every business in this town. And what makes me stand out amongst everybody else is you're going to get, I think, the total package. You're going to get somebody that's got experience, that's worked in major crimes. So if something happens in Nederland, I'm not banking on somebody else. Now, manpower-wise, that's one thing. But as far as I'm concerned, as a marshal, this is our house. You know, nothing against Boulder County. I want to have a great working relationship with Boulder County and the surrounding counties. But what goes on in Nederland needs to be handled by Nederland officers. Because when you start bringing outside people in here, they don't have the same community-oriented thoughts that we have as a community. You're basically paying hired assassins to come in here. And I don't mean that in a bad term, but you're paying hired people to come in here and do a job that should be done by people within the community. 12-hour shifts are a long time. 12-hour shifts are meant to get out of the car. I want to bring some of that aspect of community policing to Nederland. But I also want to bring the knowledge of being able, I've been lucky enough through the years to have a boatload of training. I mean, you've got 2 schools within 4 miles of this place that at any moment you could be making the news as a school shooting. It's my job for them officers to know everything about that school. It's my job for them to know that if something happens to that school, you want them responding. I know Boulder County's not going to get here soon enough, but you've got kids in that school, you want a Nederland officer to go in there, and you want to know that he knows the insides and outs of that school. And there's nothing wrong with officers going up to that high school unless Boulder County tells us we can't go in that high school and say hi to the kids and get to know the kids. We going. And that elementary school, that is a plethora of information and friendships and relationships that you will forever benefit from, because you might catch a kid way before. Not only that, but the schools are also a breeding ground for fellow officers. I'm old. The officers you get here, unless you get some 21-year-olds that are going to stay here, they're going to be long gone too. But the kids at that school, there's a possibility that they could be here at that school. And what better thing to be from the town that you work in, and you get to live in, and you work in that community. I mean, you're getting the best of both worlds. And if you've already bred that community aspect in them kids, and they've got to see how you work and how good it's working, it continues. It's like a sickness. It keeps just formulating back over and over again. That's what I bring to the table.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Tom?
I'm a worker. I'm going to be out there. I won't expect my guys to do anything I won't do. If I'm not out there being a leader for them and they see me doing it, then they buy into it. I've had bosses themselves say, how do you take 8 guys that all got the same personality and make it work? Well, you know how you make it work? You air out your grievances before they become problems. You put a bunch of guys and girls into a room and ladies, and you let them air out their grievances. That's what I bring to this table. That is some of my strengths that I want to see happen. I want to form a department where people don't want to leave. That takes a buy-in with you guys, which I think that was one thing. I know Miranda asked me, let me tell you, the first time I talked to her on the phones, let me tell you a backstory about this place with the police department. And I kind of stopped her short, and that's one thing I do. I don't go into a situation without researching what I'm going into first. So I already was aware of it. If you guys in the town would not have bought into wanting to rebuild this police department, I wouldn't be here today. Even if you didn't, there was separation within you as Board of Trustees, I would have still been hesitant of taking a position. But you guys have went full force into raising taxes and trying to bring this police department back stronger than ever. And that alone, I think, is good partnership, because ultimately I work for you and you expect me to do a job. And that's what I'm going to bring out there.
Thank you. Tanya?
Hi. What do you think will be the drawbacks from this position, if any?
The drawbacks?
Yeah.
The drawbacks are going to be the time it's going to take to get the people to trust us. Another drawback that I'm going to have is just getting the police department, nothing against the prior chiefs, up to the 21st century of policies, going through policy manuals, getting some kind of training. Another drawback that every agency is having is just recruitment. Recruitment is hard right now. We, as officers, have been beaten down so many times. A lot of people are hesitant to even want to do their job or to be in this altogether. But I think that's where you're sitting on a gold mine with Colorado State University down the road, where they have, I'm sure, a criminal justice training program. And in those programs, they have to have some kind of internships. And what we started doing was bringing people into the internships and letting them do an internship at our police department, let them get a taste of it. And we've actually had people coming back and wanting to be police officers. But I think one of the biggest drawbacks is just going to be the time it's going to take to see what's in place. Because ultimately, one of the biggest things that I would like to work on with Miranda, and I know she's already started, it's a liability nightmare, is making sure you have the proper policies in place to protect the town and the officers themselves. Because if not, it's a free-for-all.
Do we have those policies in place, or are you going to have to craft that?
At this time, they're working on them. One thing, I've talked to Miranda about it, and I've also talked to your town attorney tonight. One thing that, coming from a larger agency and knowing the people and worked so well with them, there is policy manuals that we've already put into place at our police department that we're going to be CALIA certified, which is a national certification that towns can have, and it saves them on insurance because there's set policies in place that, sure, they will have to be modified to fit within the community, but it would be something that's easily implemented that our attorneys already have looked over, and the town attorney here in Nederland can look over.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole?
Yum. All right, so Dan, and you can take some time to kind of think about this question, but what's the biggest misconception people have about you?
Sometimes I'm too brash. That's
Okay,
and
tell us about that.
sometimes they don't feel like I have a heart, and just because I'm honest with my feelings, sometimes I'm going to tell you, if you ask me for my honest to God answer, I'm going to give it to you. If you want me to sit in a meeting and please don't speak my mind, I'm gonna tell you what you want to hear, and I'll do whatever you ask me to do. But sometimes I've let my mouth get in the way of speaking things, not out of anger, but trying to better something that I thought was going the wrong way.
Okay, can you give it a specific example?
I had a homicide where a gentleman was killed in our community that the responding officers did, including the supervisor, did garbage on. He was shot in his house for a strong arm robbery. He was a minority black man who was poor, and the investigation was done poorly, and I thought that it was ending too fast. And it was like, as the weeks went by, everybody forgot about it, and I think it was because of he was a poor minority black man in our community, and it wasn't done in a predominantly wealthy community, whereas it would have stayed news, and it was like they were trying to make it go away. And I specifically went into our bosses, and I blistered them, to be honest with you, about this situation. And I just felt it was the right thing to do. Maybe I could have went about it a little more diplomatically. And maybe if I'd have sat back and thought about it a little more, but I was very passionate about it, and it bothered me. And I look back now as being a supervisor and working with people, and the time I spent at the school, and it was just a time in my career when I think I was just getting stressed to the point that I was getting frustrated, and I wasn't able to keep my mouth shut when a little less, and at least been more diplomatic about it, if that makes sense to you. That is sometimes I struggle sometimes with that, not with the public, but I stand up for my people, and I stand up for what's right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Yes.
This question's kind of general. Probably should have rewritten it a little bit, but what are some, and I'll just let you kind of define it. What are some skills that you use when engaging in police work? So whether they're technical skills, professional skills, or personal skills, what skills do you use when engaging in police
I
work?
think I'm really good at talking to people. That's one of my aspects that I'm able to, I think, with the years of experience, especially with kids. I've learned to take how I've treated adults and speak with the younger generation, but I keep it honest with them. I don't sugarcoat it around. I'll tell you, if I'm looking at you for doing something wrong, I'm gonna tell you flat out, listen, I'm watching it. And I'm not threatening people in a manner. I'm giving you a heads up to straighten up. But I've been very good and able to communicate with people, whether they be gang members or kids or older people. That's just something I can sit down with a cup of coffee, or I can sit in a room and I can talk to just about anybody. It took a lot of years to learn how to talk to kids, just because of the different language and stuff. But I think that's one thing. I'm very versatile in being able to talk to people.
Thank you. Tanya? Tanya, if you're talking, you might be muted.
Yeah, sorry. Here we go. Please describe one of the most challenging situations you have encountered in your career, and why was it challenging?
The most challenging thing I've done in my career was the 4 years I spent investigating that narcotics investigation with corrupt police officers. It put a lot of stress on me. It put a lot of stress on my family. And I was at a bad point in my life to where I thought that the world was just falling apart and there was nothing good about it. and I was very disappointed in the outcome. I mean, ultimately, we put some bad people in jail that need to go to jail, but the people that I really wanted to go to jail was the dirty cops, and they didn't go to jail. And that made me very vile towards the society we were living in. And it almost cost me my marriage, and my kids were hating me. I was just in a bad way. And one thing that we failed to do as cops too is we're all scared to go up to anybody and ask for help. And I didn't have that. And I made it through it, but it took a lot of prayer and asking the good Lord above to get me through it. And going back to church for me, that helped me at least have that outlet. And I made it through. And that's one thing I've taken out of that. And I didn't start this, but we started it within our police department, and I'm part of it. And that's called a peer support team, because a lot of officers, I know most departments, and this department does offer some kind of mental health counseling. But as police officers, we don't want to go talk to somebody because the stigma is still there, that if you talk to them and it gets out, then, you're going to be frowned upon. So it's easier for us to talk to other police officers.
That
And
makes sense.
that was
Does
a
that
good,
exist here in Boulder County?
I
Is
think
there-
it does. They said last night, the one lady said that they do have some peer support. But I think that's one thing that it allows officers to be able to, and not as myself as a chief, because sometimes officers don't want to speak with their bosses, but there needs to be some kind of outlet within the police department itself, so that officers feel they can freely go to somebody and speak to them about something that's going on in their life, because too many police officers are killing themselves these days with their own handguns, and it's just a sad time.
Yeah, that's horrible. Well, thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Jesse, page 2.
Yeah, I want to say thanks for coming forward and putting in your candidacy, and it's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And yeah, I really appreciate you responding to our call here as a community for a leader in this role. And apologize for being late. I had a dad thing happening. And,
I've got kids.
yeah, so but I was listening in and appreciate you being here. And I'll go ahead and ask my next question is just basically kind of keep talking. Please go ahead and describe, if you wouldn't mind, your best collaborative moment that you've had with a town or a city in one of your previous roles.
I think the best I'm still going to fall back on the program we started with the kids. And it was a collaboration, because we couldn't have done it without the town, because the town provided the park, and the park that the town owns allowed us to use the park. So I think that got the biggest. I mean, I could sit here and tell you stories. I've arrested thousands of people. I've done a lot of cool things that most people have never got to experience. But I think that's one of the best things that my legacy will leave at Holly Springs, not who I put in jail, because even some of the people we put in jail for 25 years, 22 years, they're getting out, So what did I accomplish there? It's the same. I just put somebody in jail for 22 years. But I think if that program continues, that's something that's going to just continue to evolve. And it's for the community. It wasn't for me. I don't live on awards or praise. It's funny. When I went to the school that time, the principal came up to me and goes, "I had no idea all the stuff you've done." That's not me. I'm not going to brag on what I do. I'm just a worker. That's all I am. People ask me why I stayed in the position I was in, never wanted to be promoted. Because when you get promoted, you can't work as much. It's the truth. You don't get to do the fun stuff anymore. All you get to do is go and sit in the boss's offices and listen to what your guy screwed up. And then you got to hear them and complaining about you being a supervisor, but that's okay, you know. But yeah, I think what I did with the community, that's priceless.
Thanks. Nicole?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning the peer support and the help that police officers have to give to other police officers. I think, as I mentioned, I am the daughter of a chief of police. And I know firsthand the depression, the post-traumatic stress disorder that happens in families of both police officers and military families. So thank you.
Yeah,
My question. Go
I don't,
ahead.
I don't think, and I'm sure your dad will attest to this, and my wife, if she was in this room, would tell you right now that I used to have nightmares all the time. And I treated her like a bad guy. She'd have to wake me up. And it was a lot of the stress I was going through. You don't realize it. Your
Yeah.
loved ones feel it, and I'm sure you did too, but, you know.
Yep. Support for all around is important. So the next question is, please describe your worst collaborative moment with the town or city.
The worst. During that time, after that investigation, I had truly thought I was still doing a good job, and I got sloppy with my reports. One of the cases, it wasn't anything I did wrong. I had all the information. I got lazy. And I went into court, and I literally got spanked by a defense attorney, and I deserved it. I truly deserved it. And it was because I got lazy and I was burned out. And to me, my work, it's like a kick in the teeth when you do bad work and you know you can do good work. And I felt I left a lot of people down. I let myself down. I let the town down because a guy walked. And that's one of, like I said, I don't have that story that I did something really crazy and got in trouble or anything that I could say was one of my worst times, because I never got in trouble while I was working there. That's one of the worst things. And it was just, like I said, it was sloppy police work, and I'm embarrassed that I did it. And I set it as my goal that I'll never allow people working with me or under me to make the same mistake I did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. I'm curious as to why you're leaving your current position. And I'm reading in your cover letter that you're retiring from law enforcement, but this is a law enforcement position. So,
And I'll be honest with you on that one. 2 months ago, I truly thought I did not want to do this job anymore. I was spent. I was like, I promised him I was going to retire at 50. I stuck around because my boss had said, please don't leave me. Our department is changing in a way that I see this ship sinking, and we're not going in the direction, and we're not getting the answers. And it feels like, you ever work at a place and no one cares? So I was tired of law enforcement altogether. I truly was going to get out, was going to retire, and then I was applying for banking positions to be an investigator, and nothing was working out. It just wasn't working out. I was finding that, the mistake I made at not finishing my bachelor's degree was not, it was not helping me one bit. I worked 28 years in a job that I'm like, what do I have to give to the world besides my last 28 years? And then a crazy thing happened, and people can believe in divine intervention or anything. If you want to, I do. I was late one night. I was having a nice cold beer, sending out resumes, and Nederland, Colorado popped up. And to be honest with you, I was like, yeah, chief of police. Click. and I sent my resume. And then the first time I talked to Miranda and I started researching this town, I felt my juices starting to flow again. And when I found out the police department had disbanded and you guys were trying to get it back together, I thought, wow, what an opportunity. I don't have to come in and clean up somebody else's mess or work with people that might have been problems. I get to start fresh and we get to build it the way we want to build it. And I think if you talk to any businessman that starts from the ground up, it's a wonderful feeling to see something grow and just build. And that's the way Holly Springs felt to me. But as any businessman will probably tell you, as the company grows and then it goes public, you kind of lose that family-oriented business, and now it's become a business. The more I looked into your town, the more I was like, wow, this is crazy. And when I show up here at this town and I sit down in one of your meetings yesterday, and like I said, you may not believe in it, but I do. And I sit across the table from a young man that was in a small town in Pennsylvania and knew exactly what I was talking about. And we're 17, probably closer to 2,000 miles from there. That's crazy. That's just nuts. So that's what excited me. I do have a lot to offer. You know, I was lucky. I started in a small town. I got to get all that training, that experience. I worked in the federal system, worked in the state. So I think I bring a lot to the table from the big city aspect of the ability to handle our own stuff, but also I'm a small town guy. I'm glad I'm not in a suit and a tie here. I'm the kind of guy you want to see. You might see me in a pair of balloon jeans walking around town. You're definitely going to see me in some hunting gear. I can guarantee you that. So that's just me. So that's, I was lucky enough. Like I said, I'm vested in the state system. So it's nice to be able to know that, you know, I can get my time back.
Okay, thank you for that answer and your honesty.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question, actually. I appreciate that. So I thought about that too from the resume. Go ahead, Eric.
Karen, did you want to ask about the co-responder?
I'd love to.
Go for it.
So, Daniel, the town has recently applied for a grant to add a local Nederland co-responder to the Boulder County Co-Responder Project team. Do you have experience working with co-responders? And regardless of whether you do or not, could you explain how co-responders and police officers collaborate to respond more effectively to calls for service? So number one, do you have experience? Number two, how do the two work together to respond more effectively to calls?
I was trained with a CIT training, which is what we call to deal with mental illness and situations in North Carolina for that. The only I did not work the road a lot, so I did not have to deal with the mentally ill on the road because I was a plainclothes detective and I wasn't forced to go answer the calls. I can honestly say of working in a school with 2,000 kids that you see a lot of mental illness, whether it be, and I'm looking at mental illness, I think some people lose track of mental illness and don't realize that people are with addictions, that's a mental illness also. So I think we lose that a little bit. We all think of mental illness when you ask somebody in the public, mental illness is just somebody running down the street going crazy. That's not always the case. Mental illness goes in many different avenues. We did not have the co-responder, and I think that's one way that law enforcement and a collaboration with mental health treatment people have failed together over the years because we've thrown law enforcement in there to handle situations that we had no business being involved with to begin with. It happens still regularly on a basis all the time to where they're sending police officers on mental illness calls in my jurisdiction with the EMS people. And a lot of times it's because they're scared, but ultimately it's putting a bad taste in people with mental illnesses faces or in their minds that here's this law enforcement officer coming in. They've called to ask for treatment and help, but yet a cop showing up. And then we end up having to put handcuffs on them and transport them for the mental health people to the hospital. And what did we just do? We told somebody, if you go get treatment for mental health, a police officer is going to put you in handcuffs and take you to the place. That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, that's why we're having these problems where police officers are getting in these situations that, didn't have to occur to begin with. And I think our governments alone are finally starting to wake up to this and say something's got to be done. Like I said, I thought the co-responder thing, when she was in the meeting last night, it's awesome to know that she's not only has mental health training, but she was prior to law enforcement. She knows both sides. Because let's be real here. It's not fair to say, you've got your master's degree in counseling and I'm going to send you into a house with a guy with a knife. I mean, that's not going to work out well. Because then I'm putting your life in risk, and there's some incidents where it still has to go. But somebody that's just having a crisis and a mental breakdown that's not threatening to hurt anybody or anybody else, we have no business going to that call. That should be trained professionals. And that's the way it should be. And we haven't been doing that. In my 28 years, this is probably the last, even CIT, the way that was drawn up, I think it was to check a box, but it was never implemented properly the way it should have been implemented, because that was implemented for us to get the training that we could literally be mentally health trained and take somebody there and say, hey, this person needs help, commit them. And then it turned into another animal. But I think the co-responder person, if we didn't take advantage of that grant and work with something like that, then we're failing ourselves.
Oh, okay, thank you for that.
And this sort of follows up on that same theme. Just wondering what you think the role of a police department and law enforcement officers are interfacing with non-policing human services agencies. So we're talking about like our local food pantry, our community center, the area agency on aging, the Emergency Family Assistance Association, agencies like this that are working up in the mountains. What's the role of the police in interfacing with those agencies?
Forgive me for not remembering names tonight, please. But I spoke with a young lady here. I know what she was wearing. Isn't that terrible? I know her clothes. But she said she works with people in Nederland that are having their electric shut off, or
It's Kelly.
what was that?
Kelly.
Kelly. That's my wife's name. I should have remembered that. She'd kill me. But those are the ways. And I want to sit down with her, and I told her we need to sit down and collaborate, because the stuff that goes on at this community center or the food pantry, those are stuff that officers can talk to the people that work in there, and they say, hey, you might want to stop over there. They're having some problems. And it's not, dad's beating mom up. She's coming in with black eyes or something. And those are the kinds of things the kids are just in shambles. Those are the things we can get involved in, not in a criminal aspect, but go over and help them out. Go over and talk to them. Hey, do you need anything? Because sometimes we as humans, I shouldn't say sometimes, probably over half the time, we take pride in ourselves and not asking for help when we truly need it. And people just won't do it. But if we were to take that effort, just with the elderly, of checking on the elderly in the community and see if they need something, and if we were to knock on a door and one of our officers knock on the door and see they don't have any power, that's when you reach out to other people and say, hey, this poor person doesn't have any power. I was in their house and they were so sweet, but they don't have any food. Those are the things that you need to reach out, which I think you've established just with her alone and with the co-responder things. I mean, you can see it's getting pieced together, and it's part of the puzzle. And what law enforcement is a piece of that puzzle. So it's all got to fit together and work together, but we got to collaborate as a team, because if not, it'll just fall apart.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you. Karen.
So as you know, our tax increase measures that were on the November ballot passed. So the police department is fully funded. However, additional funds are always helpful to improve the department and the services it provides. Colorado Senate Bill 22-145 established 3 public safety grant programs, one for multidisciplinary crime prevention and intervention, another for law enforcement recruitment, retention, and tuition, and a third called the State's Mission for Assistance in Recruiting and Training Policing. These grants are now becoming available. Do you have experience applying for and managing grants? And what do you anticipate to be the challenges of obtaining funding from grants?
Grants are their own little animal sometimes when you're dealing with a government entity, but they're out there. And just because Colorado has grants doesn't mean there's not other grants out there. It's just like equipment. When we started our tactical team, our SWAT team, I hate to even call it a SWAT, it was a tactical team. We didn't have equipment. You know, I went and started writing grants because all these people, they want to give stuff away. These companies want to give stuff away. Just people don't ask for them. I'm all about taking grants from state agencies and working with them. You just got to be careful the language that goes along with them and them grants, because sometimes, just like we've done with governor's highway safety grants, and if they don't show numbers or they're not doing something, they can come in and make you pay back those grants. And, you know, I don't want to put ourselves in a bind without having council look over those grants and really research those grants, because let's be honest here. Sometimes these bills are written and they sound pretty on paper, but when you start digging into them, there's a lot of little caveats inside that bill that there's stipulations on what you can do.
So you have written grant applications
I have
previously?
written grants. I've not written them for state, but I've written them for businesses.
Okay.
And I think this community being so small is ripe for grants that want to give stuff away, if I should say.
Have you been involved in managing the
I have not.
financial part, reporting, or any of that?
I have not, because our department kind of stayed away from them for a while there, because we did a governor's highway safety grant, which basically it was like when the federal government, I don't know if you recall the grants they were giving out, you can hire police officers and the government would pay for them for so many years. I think it was a 3-year grant and they would fund all your cars and all that stuff. We did some with our governor's highway safety, which is state funded. And there was a lot of different things that had to be kept up with that people weren't keeping up with. And it's simple stuff. It's not, I don't want to say it's delicate work, but that is my job as the marshal to keep up with. And if I have questions, that is one thing that all you have to do is ask. There's people smarter than me all the time. You just got to be willing to ask them. You know what? You got to learn sometime, and you're going to be thrown into the mix. And, you know, if that's what the town would want me to write grants, then there's a lot of grant writing classes that you can go to that are, some of them are free, they're online, they'll tell you how to write a good grant and how to manage it. But I'd want to research every one of those grants before I start signing our name to a dotted line and letting people outside of town come in and dictate how we're going to operate and what we're going to do with it, you know.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya?
Nederland and as the entire mountain region has been experiencing an increase in breaking and entering, trespassing, shoplifting, car burglaries, etc. What are some tools and experience that you can bring to Nederland to help prevent these crimes?
I think some of those crimes that are happening is because they're not being seen. Officers are not seen in the area. Criminals are people of opportunity. And if they see opportunities where they don't feel there's any kind of pushback, then they're going to come in and take what they want. I think officers being seen, being out on foot, seeing patrol cars, being in an area and not just sitting in one general location is a good way to deter. I think just by going in and talking to communities, collaborating with the people, other agencies, that's one thing. You said it best, that multiple agencies or locations are getting hit. So obviously this is a group of people. And if you share information, everybody's on a sharing information type of relationship. That's when you can say, hey, man, there was a car here, or this is the type of person. And that's where you educate your store owners or the people within the community too. Hey, be on the lookout for this. If you see anything suspicious, please call. I mean, it's not a bad thing to call us if it's come out to be nothing. But education of the community also and the businesses themselves. We had a huge problem of no one thought anybody would break into your car as long as you left the keys unlocked. They were hammering us. I mean, people were just leaving their cars unlocked, and they were setting up the opportunities to allow it. But I think education and at least talking to people and saying, hey, if you see a car that's suspicious, this town of 1,500 people, I'll guarantee you've got most people in this town know everybody's business or who's doing what and when they're doing it. So if somebody strange comes into town, now ultimately I know this place has a lot of people coming through, but if you see something strange, to call and let them know to call. But I think with a police department here and officers that are vigilantly walking around, especially in the areas to where they're having these problems, I mean, it's not too many businesses around here where they're smash and grabs. They're going to look for windows that are wide open and easily accessible. But that's something that we can go to the community and let them be aware of it too. I've also talked about, I know I said it in the article, I know some people aren't a big fan of LPR cameras and information being recorded. But boy, LPR cameras, if you put them one end of town, you don't have that many entrances. And guess what? If somebody comes into town, breaks into something, and you can get a plate or vehicle description at the time that vehicle's coming out of town or in town, that alone is amazing. I mean, I don't even have to put a police officer out there. It does the work for me, and they can sit at the computer and go, most of these cars these people are driving either are stolen or a lot of times, or, they're taken from somebody, or they're being wanted already. So these are things where simple things like a camera system at each end of town can solve a crime and stop people from going up and down the mountain and stealing from everybody.
Oh, that sounds like a really good idea. How much do those cameras cost?
They're not cheap, I'll be honest with you, but that's something where you can look, like Karen was saying, you can look for grants. There's different ways. If you're savvy enough and you beg and plead enough, you might be able to get help. But there's cheaper stuff out there, and it doesn't have to be LPRs. I mean, there's other
What
cameras.
does LPR stand for?
Now you're gonna get me.
License plate
I just
recognition.
I don't know.
Reader, yes.
So
But
it can read at night, it can see license plates.
yeah, it can read absolutely everything. I mean, but if anything, it might not get the tag because let's be honest, with snow, everybody knows that license tags in the winter are covered up by snow or dirt or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it can get maybe a clear picture of a car coming through, and I know a break-in happened at 2:00 in the morning, and I can look at that camera and go, there's only 4 cars coming out of here at 2:00 in the morning. So, hey, everybody, other agencies will send a be on the lookout email out, or I don't know how they do it here. We send mass emails to other agencies, be on the lookout for this person. But you got to educate your businesses too, and businesses got to be on board to help out and keep their stuff protected. We have that problem where businesses just, especially we deal with larger businesses and not smaller business where they don't call us until it's too late.
Right. Now, do you think there's adequate like deterrence or penalties, for those who do get caught? Because a lot of times it's a ticket.
I don't know how it works here. No. But the problem is I would say 95 at least % of the people we're dealing with that are doing smash and grabs or
Yeah.
they're stealing
Yeah.
are addicted, I would bet a paycheck each time it's fentanyl. I mean, it's just, that's the drug of choice now, and it's either fentanyl or meth. It's not people running around for a bag of weed. It's people that have a serious addiction problem, and they know that there's groups out there where they can steal stuff and they can even shoplift and take their goods. And you could probably go down to shops in Boulder and Denver, and they can fence all that stuff and get rid of it and really cheap. And they're selling it to stores. So I think you're not going to stop people from taking stuff. But if the word gets out real fast that Netherlands got birds in the sky that are telling on people, or they got cops working everywhere, don't go up there. That's the best deterrent in the world, because you're not going to arrest yourself out of that problem.
No.
Just,
Okay.
You're just not. I mean,
It's just the
it's
next
such
guy is the common. Yeah.
it's such an epidemic right now, and I would dare to venture that the Boulder DA's office is going to plead everything down to nothing, and they're going to walk out of there and
Why do they do that?
Um, well, if you had a DA here, they'd say they're overwhelmed.
Right.
That's what they would say. I just don't feel, I think they could do more into some treatment for these people
Right.
and offer them, if they gave stiffer sentences and said, hey, instead of doing this, why don't we give you some, rehab for 30 days or something. If you go into rehab, it goes away.
They have a lot of money towards that right now. Maybe there'd be a collaboration with the police and the social services groups for that. And maybe there already is. I don't know.
Well, I had mentioned, and I'd spoken with the fine Colby and Troy. Did I get it right? Tony, I got a T. But one thing we did when we were at the high school, and we still do it to this day to a certain extent, is you can get away with it a lot. That if you catch somebody for these small petty crimes, I call them.
Right. Right. They're petty.
Why even spend the time writing the paperwork on them if they're willing to do an agreement with you to do some kind of community service in town, whether it be picking garbage around the park or going around the lake and taking trash out? If the DA's on board with it, then I'd just soon do that so I can keep an eye on them for 20 hours, then send them down to Boulder, letting them go into court, and let them walk out and be getting another fix in 2 weeks. I mean, we got a better chance of people being able to talk to them up here and maybe changing them. And if that doesn't work, I think jail and writing tickets and stuff should be one of the last things we do. Because yes, we give them a ride to the bottom of the hill, and we hope they don't climb back up, but it hasn't solved the problem.
Well, there's a boss, so.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tanya. Tom?
There we go. The first step in rebuilding a police department, there's hires left to be done, there's policy to be written, and there's paperwork that goes with policing. Tell us about, is that a strong suit, medium suit of yours? And what's your strategy for rebuilding the police department? Because that's going to be your job. Miranda's been doing it herself. I want it off her back.
My guys are going to tell you that I am very finicky on making sure everything is in order. The first thing I want to do is make sure, first of all, your policies are set up and some kind of training program that if we bring new officers in here, we're just not throwing them out there with a gun and a badge and letting them run around for, by themselves. We need to do an inventory and at least see what we have. I mean, I can't honestly, it's been 2.5 months since you had a law enforcement officer in that building. What kind of equipment do you have? Do we even have the right equipment and stuff to hire police officers to put them out in the street? Because if we don't have the capital equipment in line, there's no sense of hiring police officers, so we can't even give them the stuff they need to go out and do their job. So the first thing is going to be literally getting a policy in order because there's no sense of hiring a ton of people and bringing them in with no policy, because now you're right back to square one. You've got people in place doing a job that you're not protective as a council or a board of trustees. The town's not, like I explained to the town attorney, Ms. Jennifer. You're setting yourself up to write a big check to somebody and to be on Denver news for at least a good week or two. And if you want Denver's news media poached all over the place up here, videoing, I will do what Miranda and you guys want me to do, but I'm not going to jump into starting a police department to watch it fail again without getting it set up right to watch it succeed. If that's what you want, then I'm not your person, because I truly believe you're going to tick a lot of people off in this community if you just raise their taxes and you throw a police department out there that fails again in 6 months. I know if I was living in this town and you took money out of my pocket for my family and you just tried to throw warm bodies on the street, that's not going to work. I'm going to be upset, and you probably won't be in office very long. So my job is to protect you guys to make sure this is done properly. And it doesn't need to be done. It might take 2 or 3 months. I mean, but is 2 or 3 months worth years of good policing? Or do you want it done in a month and have no policing? So like I explained to the Boulder Sheriff's deputy last night when he asked me, when are we getting 24-hour police coverage? Well, I only have 5 officers. I'm not going to run my guys into the ground working 14-hour shifts. They have lives and families too. And when they're going to work, they have vacation they can take. And you guys pay Boulder County taxes. And if I don't have a police officer working because their kid was sick at home, that's Boulder County's responsibility to come and answer a call in Nederland. I'm sorry. And that's just how I feel. And I'm being totally honest with you. And I was honest last night. Now, when we have the appropriate people that you can have a 24-hour police department, then yes, I think that's what your goal is and the future is for here. But it's not tomorrow, and it's not a month from now, because if you made me marshal, I'm not bringing in bad people. That's just not me. I won't be here very long. I'll be like, if you force me to tell me I got to hire somebody that I know, I've looked through their background, and I say, that's not a good fit. And Miranda's going, I don't know about that one. That's not a good fit. Unless you want to write a check. I mean, if you want to write a check to somebody in the community and make them rich, that's I'm not going to be on that boat when that
Nobody's
boat's
going to get rich by being a cop here.
But I'm just saying, you have to have something to protect the money within this community and to do it right. Because if you get sued one time for millions of dollars, you're going to pay for that for the rest of your life. And it's happening. They're getting checks. Because you'll have 27 lawyers up here if I put a bad police officer on the street that I knew shouldn't have been a police officer, but I hired him just to fill a body. I mean, it's going to be, you'll have 27 lawyers from Denver up here doing press conferences in the middle of the town square down there.
Thanks. I think we need to backtrack to a couple questions, which actually, quite honestly, segue really well off the one you just answered. So, Tom, there was one like in the middle of page 3. I don't know if you want to ask that or skip that and have.
I think it's Jesse's turn.
We got Nicole's here with the second to the last one on page 3. Jesse's after her.
You want me to go, Billy?
Yes, the coaching and mentoring question, please.
Gotcha. Well, the only thing here was I didn't actually hear, Dan, if you could just very quickly, succinctly say, what do you struggle the most with that day-to-day administration of police work?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that question right there?
So what do you struggle with the most? Like, what would you say is the thing is not your strong suit in the day-to-day administration of police work?
My strong suit.
Not your strong suit.
Not my strong suit. Sitting back and letting my guys work without them feeling like I micromanage them.
Okay.
I think that's, my guys will tell you the same thing. They've literally had to have an honest opinion or an honest meeting with me and say, dude, you got to back off and let us do our jobs. You do your job, you protect us, and we'll do our job, but trust us.
Got it.
That is something I had to learn, and I'm still learning to this day. And it's not that I don't trust my people. It's just I like to work.
Well, that segues very nicely into the next question, which is about coaching and mentoring, as Billy had mentioned. So coaching and mentoring are really crucial skills for a leader, right? And we can kind of be on opposite ends of the continuum. We can be really coaching oriented, or we can be really micromanaging, and sometimes we can just do the job. So how would you define coaching?
My
What's your
job,
process?
I'm sorry, I didn't know it was
go
a
ahead.
two-part. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
you know what? Let's break it up. How would you define coaching first? Just as succinctly as you
My
can.
job at Define Coaching is to get somebody in a position to where if I left here tomorrow, they could take over without blinking an eye. I'm the type of coach that's going to teach you from mistakes that I made. I'm not going to be the kind of guy that says, because most people ask, why? Why do we do it this way? Through my 28 years, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done things that I should have done better, and it hasn't hurt me to where I've ever been sued or ever been in trouble, but I could have been better at it. And
Okay.
my job to coach them is, like I said, it's to give them the proper tools to succeed and the proper cheerleading to succeed. I like to give people as much leeway as they can. I'm not the type of coach that's going to bring you in and haul around. I'm going to be straight and upfront with you on what I think's wrong and what I think you need to do to correct it. And I think a coach leads by example, not by sitting on the bleachers and watching the game.
Okay. So that sort of answered the second part of that, which is what is your process? So it sounds like it's a lead by example, having those conversations, doing the cheerleading, giving them, the tools to, what sounds like even take your, move into a position if you were not to be there, tomorrow. So then my follow-up question is, how do you know you're being truly effective versus thinking that you're being effective as a coach?
When you can go into a room and you can tell guys that you need them to do something that they truly don't want to do, and they give forth the effort, you got their attention. There's stuff that I go to my guys to have them do now, which I dread even getting them to do it. But they do it because they respect me. And they do it with the best outcome that they can possibly give. And they give 110%. Because ultimately, I'm not there to watch them so they could go out and slack and just relax and kick back in the seat. But they go out there and do a good job. That's how I know respect is earned. And if your guys respect you and they know they got your back, that you have their back and that you'll stand up for them, especially when things are not going so well, they'll do just about anything for you. But
you for
they
that.
also know when they do something wrong that you're not going to haul around and say, well, you should have done it this way. No, I'm going to be the type of guy to bring you in the office and say, you done screwed up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Dan. Jesse, and just so you know, Dan, this. Jesse's going to ask you a question, then we got 3 more scripted questions.
And
maybe
I
a
would
little more.
apologize too, real quick. If I say guys, I don't mean, that's just the way I talk. I mean guys and girls. I don't want to exclude anybody or make anybody feel, when I say guys, it's just,
People.
yeah. So forgive me for it. I got scolded for that. I don't,
Me too. Go ahead, Jesse.
I, I'm
Not from New York.
dude. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Yes.
Jesse.
Yeah, Dan, so I guess this next question will kind of riff off of one thing that Tom was getting at a little bit ago, just in that, you know, you're the expert here in the room on law enforcement, and you know, being on this team of the BOT and Miranda and her staff, and then our electorate, you know, we're all going to be really queuing off of you in terms of how do we do this and how do we do it well and do it right. And you know, it was a dark night of the soul, if you will, for Nederland. I feel like it was a real kind of critical time that we recently went through in the last 6 months or so of losing our police department and deliberating how we were going to make headway and move forward. And you know, and you know, fast forward, and here we are now. And we still got a long journey ahead of us at this point. And I feel that, you know, there was a really strong push from the community to keep our local police department, because that is you know, there's definitely, as you were saying earlier before I got here, I was listening in, just kind of talking about the difference between having a local PD versus, you know, having Boulder County just kind of looking over our shoulders and trying to look out for us a little bit, but versus having our own PD is a whole different thing. You know, some of the things you were saying kind of really struck me as far as one of the things that Karen asked is about, you know, you were going to retire, but you felt a little nudge from some higher intervention, if you will. And then you kind of touched on the fact that we have a gold mine here with the streams and the mountains and the lakes and the reservoir, and then mentioning the hunting and the, you know, just an appreciation of the outdoors and whatnot. And I guess, you know, because it is going to be a journey, and you know, we're just trying to take the first step right here with selecting, you know, who's going to be our leader in this effort. It will be a long journey, and I want to kind of hear you talk a little bit about how you are going to keep that wind in your sails, and how you are going to, you know, be able to tap into that that inspiration, if you will, because that's, you know, I'm a business leader in town, and I kind of think about that a lot. What does motivate our guys? How do we build a team? And for me, you know, the most powerful motivator out there is inspiration, and that I heard that from you when you talked about, you know, you were having that cold beer that night, and you saw that that opportunity come across your radar, and then just, you know, touching on it with, you know, your love of the outdoors and the love of the beautiful environment we have here, and kind of what you were talking about with, you know, how we have a small town and we can say hi to people and, you know, wave, ask how you're doing today. And I guess I'm just trying to hear you speak a little bit about to your source of inspiration for how are you going to make sure you have the endurance to go the distance on the journey and not get burnt out, you know, be able to draw, how are you going to recharge your batteries, so to speak, when it's, you know, long meetings. These meetings can last a long time, and, you know, you're going to work long hours. It'll be a lonely journey at times. So just curious to hear how you're going to kind of keep your batteries charged, yeah.
Well, I'd like to first say I wish I was an expert. I'm not an expert.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of knowledge, but I think what a humble leader does, if you don't know the answer, I'm willing to reach out to somebody that's got the answer, because I'm never above asking somebody else for help. As for my inspiration to keep motivated, I look at this town. If you guys had already had several officers here, and I'd be coming into a mess, I probably wouldn't be here today. But I look at this town as sort of like one of your kids. As you can watch that kid grow and watch it prosper, you go through trials and tribulations with your children where some days you're not so proud. Some days you're like, what in God's name am I doing here? What was I thinking? And then the next thing you know, your wife gets pregnant again. You're like, what in the world was I thinking again? But when you get to that age when those kids graduate from high school, there's that proud moment in a life of a parent when that kid walks across the stage and they move on in their life and they succeeded and you kept them safe and you've watched them grow and you've built them up to the person they are. And then you watch as they go out into the world and get stronger and they fly. And it is a real thing to keep you motivated. Because there's so many times in parenting, you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And you're stressed the heck out. When that baby's crying at 2 a.m, and I used to work night shift, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. That smile in the morning when they look at you and wake up, it would get you happy again. If you've ever worked with kids before, and you can watch kids that are not your own, and they look at you and they look up to you and see you've done good things for them, or just any person in the community, and you get a thanks. Or if I come into this meeting and, I would like to start some kind of Facebook. I know you have one, but actually have a Facebook where we put things on it. Or I'll get somebody else for Twitter because I have no idea how to run that stuff, to be honest with you. But to put things out in the community and you're getting good response back, that's the food that feeds you. The food from the community. Am I going to be here in 20 years? Working as a law enforcement? Probably not. I'll be 71 years old. Sooner or later, Dan's got to sit on the beach and drink some margaritas. I mean, that's just me. I need to relax a little bit, and then I'll come back and hunt some more. And then I got to give my wife her due time. But I get pride and ambitions to work harder by watching good things happen. You've took that step as a board of trustees by putting that effort and financially to raise a budget of 5 police officers to $1.2 million. I'll be honest with you. It blew my mind that you have 5 police officers and that you're willing to put that much money into them. And for me, it's like I was a big sports person. I like hunting. If I can put forth the effort, that's the reward you get. It's not accolades from everybody else that keeps you going, but you've got to have that in your heart to want to push forward. And I believe, and I'm a big faith man, I'll tell you straight out, the good Lord looks out for me. I wouldn't have found this if there was not some kind of, he wasn't saying, hey, and I've got a wife that's on the same page that says, if that's where it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And when I go to bed at night, I've prayed for the last 2 months that if this isn't what it's supposed to happen, Lord, then let it be, and I'll move on to something else. But every time I turn around, he slaps me in the face and says, you need to go back. And I've flown halfway across the country to a town I've never been to. I look like a tourist driving up to Boulder Canyon, taking pictures of stuff and sending them on text. And I'm thinking, gosh, dang, people are like, what's wrong with this guy? But I find the beauty here. And it brings me back to my childhood. That's my motivation. I don't like to fail. I hate to fail. I've never liked losing, and I never liked the trophy for losing. I'm a winner, and I like to succeed in what I'm doing. And if you were to hire me for this position, I'm going to stick with it. I may fail. And if I fail, then, I failed trying. But I'm not going to put forth my best effort. That's all I can do. I'm not perfect. I'm not an expert. I don't know everything. But I sure know how to smile and dial on a telephone and get some advice. So, yep.
Thanks, Dan. So I got one. Related. How would you describe, so it's 2 questions. How would you describe a positive, healthy, and productive culture in a police department?
Well, I'd like to say police officers are always happy and they don't gossip, but that's a straight lie. We're the world's worst gossipers in the entire world. one thing I've known through the years, a happy police department always isn't about money. Everybody thinks the more you pay, the better you're going to get. Everybody's happy. That's not always the case because money only lasts for so long. Happiness is in a police department and a healthy relationship is your officers feel appreciated, whether it be from the town appreciating them. And it doesn't take much. Us police officers are pretty simple-minded people. A simple pair of BDU pants. And an officer will be, oh my God, I get a pair of pants. I'm like, yeah, you get a pair of pants today. They're happy. I took my guys a box of Dunkin' Donuts in the morning, and they thought I'd just given them gold. They'll work like mad dogs. They just want to feel appreciated. That's it. Because if you start feeling that you're not appreciated, and I think that's what's going on in society nowadays, officers don't feel appreciated, and that's why officers are either getting out or they're just going out and sitting in their patrol cars and not doing anything. They don't feel appreciated. And you find that a lot in large police departments in large communities because there's not that family aspect. You've got 5 officers. Some of the best times I ever had was having breakfast with my guys in the middle of the morning on a Sunday morning, or having them bring food to guys that are working. Guys just want to feel appreciated and feel like that you care. When they lose that, you've lost the police department. You guys have taken that step to show that you care. So it's whoever you hire as a marshal to take that next leap and show that they care. And it's got to be, it's a collaboration between everybody, you know.
Thanks. And so the second question is, what are some ways that you would work to develop and maintain a positive NPD, Nederland Police Department culture?
I like to squash things before they become a problem. If I know that guys are complaining, I'm a true believer in putting people in the room and treating men and women like they're adults and be able to talk out a problem without having to run their mouth to somebody else. If I can't put you in a room to look over and say, Jesse, I got a problem with you. This is how I feel you did me wrong. And if you two can't get, I don't care if it's a screaming match. If you got to get it out. Because it festers. And it's like cancer. Once it sets in, it spreads. But if you can break that off and rip that Band-Aid off real quick, a lot of guys go, I didn't even think about it that way. Because we're not all perfect. And the first time somebody gets in a room that's saying, I don't ever do nothing wrong, it's him. It's Tom over there. He's always doing the problem. He's the problem guy. Then get out of here. You don't belong here. Because if you sit here and say you don't do nothing wrong, then you don't belong here. We all make mistakes. But air stuff out. We've gotten too far away from. We give guys police cars, authority to take people to jails, guns. You can take somebody's lives, but we can't put them in a room to discuss a problem they got. Everybody wants to get on their phone and start sending out hate text messages or talking trash because it's easy. Say it to their face. And I know if any of these two guys were to come with me, they best get ready because we're going to hash some stuff out. And either they like it or move on, because a healthy department is better than having 3 officers that are really good than having 5 officers with 2 of them that are cancers, because a bad apple will ruin a whole barrel. So that's how I do. I like to do stuff to make people feel appreciated. I like to, once in a while, buy them a pizza or 2. Once in a while, if we got a little bit left of budget, every police officer in the world got I want this list. I want this new fancy flashlight because it's cool. And they saw it, somebody else had it. You know what? If there's a little bit left in the budget, you can throw a guy a bone and give him a $100 flashlight. Man, he'll do. You keep him happy for at least a month. I mean, seriously. And you know what? But I get a month out of him, and then next month, if we have another next month, I'll buy him a pizza. And then after 6 or 7 months, if he's still whining, I'm like, just shut up.
Well, thanks. Eric.
Tom, did you get to ask your question about recruitment there at the top? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It came.
That's why I went back.
Came simultaneously. Got it. Yeah, we were wondering how you understand the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how diversity and equity, in particular, have potentially impacted you in your career thus far, and how you think those values can be implemented at the Nederland Police Department.
I can't stand somebody that treats somebody like garbage based on race, ethnicity, religion, or any other thing. One thing I couldn't stand at the school, and I hated it, and the kids would tell you this, I hated even minority black kids saying the N-word in front of me. It made me feel uncomfortable. I used to tell them all the time, don't say that stuff. If we know somebody's being targeted or treated, we need to end it and end it fast. It needs to be taken care of. People need to feel like they're wanted. We shouldn't look at anybody based on their race, their ethnicity, who they like and who they dislike. If I'm correct in this aspect, this community is pretty inclusive of who we all allow here. I don't look at Jesse because he wears a hat or Tom because he's got a pretty sweater, you know, or
Sweater envy.
or Billy because I like how he's dressing today. I truly wish I could dress like that, but I tried to look nice today.
Earlier today,
know,
schedule.
I don't think we should ever. I think the funniest thing I heard last night was, I'm sorry, I'm terrible. The lady that runs the community center.
Done. She just left.
She goes to me, how do you feel about somebody walking down the street with swords or nunchucks? I don't really care. You could wear a tutu and a pink hat. As long as no one cares, who cares what people are doing or who they are? If they're not affecting the safety of the public, I don't care. And we shouldn't care. And if we start caring, then this probably isn't the community that's the whole part of it. That's the fun. I mean, if I want to wear something different, I mean, who cares? That's what being a community is about. No one else is the same. We're a hodgepodge of people from Wisconsin, Ohio, Texas. I met a guy that was Texas, all over the country. I mean, we all got different values, but it doesn't mean we don't have to be friends. We don't have to get along and treat everybody the same. We might disagree, and we probably are going to disagree on certain aspects. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, you should be able to at least talk it out, and if there's a problem, work it out. I can honestly say, I said this to somebody the other night. I don't know whether it was my nights are starting to run together. I've never had a problem with anything like that in law enforcement. I've never seen it. I don't know. It's there. But I think people respect me and knew better enough that I don't tolerate it. So if they knew I don't tolerate it and I'd lose my stuff over it, they don't do it around me. I don't tolerate that. I just don't. I'm 5 foot. I say on my license 5'6", maybe 5'5". I'm bald. Let me see. I don't want somebody looking at me and saying, we don't like you short, bald people. You know, I don't want that. Why would I treat somebody else like that? That's not right. And if I find out one of my officers is right, I will figure out real fast with human resources, but they won't be here. They can go work somewhere else. I don't want you here. We're law enforcement officers. I'm not people to go around and worry about what other people. We're there to protect people, and that's it. No matter who they are. I don't ask. And sometimes I'll say guys and girls, and I'll apologize, and I'll say I mean it in proper terms. That's just, I'm old, and I'm learning as I go. I don't offend people on purpose. I just do it sometimes because I'm just old. And I'll learn. But as for the mountaineers coming off the mountain, I'm probably going to be like, hey, bro, tell me some stories. That's just my type of guy. That's me. I'm not your suit and tie guy. I'm not going to be your office guy. I'm your type of guy that's going to be down there, a pair of Carhartts, wearing a Carhartt hat. I might even have a cowboy hat. I have one somewhere. You'll be like, there's that crazy Marshall again, wearing his
need-
cowboy hat. If you buy me a horse, I'd probably get a horse and I'd stable it up down there and have a lever action on my side. It'd be old school. I
That'd
mean,
be cheaper than buying you a squad car.
I'm talking about it. Buy me some
will.
nice chaps and one of them. I look like the guy from Yellowstone.
Hey, we'll
Kevin
get-
Costner.
Then we would have Denver news up here.
Yes, sir. They'd be like, don't go up there. That Marshall's crazy.
Maybe we'll get you some nunchucks.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking.
Karen, you want to?
Sure. So are you currently interviewing for any other jobs? And if so, where are you in the interview process with the other jobs?
You are the only law enforcement job that I am interviewing for that I've even applied for. I haven't. Well, I take that back. I'm sorry. Glenn something. I don't know. I sent an Indeed thing to. It was in the vicinity for a detective with the district attorney's office. I never heard back from them. I'll be honest. BB&T, Truist Bank, offered me a spot to make pretty good money. But it's working 3 days a week from 2 days from home and stuff. I had to keep that open. I'd be a fool to not keep that in the process. I'm just being straight up with you.
When are they due an answer from you?
Oh, I gave them an answer. I mean, I said, hey, yeah, I'm willing to accept because I got to keep that in the pipeline.
So
And then-
you accepted the offer?
Yeah,
So
I
you're-
couldn't tell them I didn't want them to move on, and then I come up here, file it up here, and then next week I have better one bird in hand than nothing. And so, yes, I did. I told them, and I am going through the process with them. And if this were to fall through, I will be going to work as a investigator at a bank. So that's just being,
Thank you.
I still got a house. I still got to pay for it.
I have a question that's I'd heard from Miranda. Sounds like you might have a tie to Colorado already with your kids?
My three boys are roughnecks. They've worked. My son was out here. He's been out here 3 years. He works for Ensign out of Denver. He actually was blown up in a rig out there in just below Greeley 2 years ago. It was only by the good Lord above that he made it out because the rig burned the ground and he was burned up pretty bad. But that was one of the scariest things flying out here. But one of the proudest days because my son went back to work after a month. They ripped the skin off his face. He's like, I'm coming back. And it's paid off dividends for him. And I think he got that from his old man, never quit. And now he's a driller. My other son graduated from high school. He works with him on his crew. My son's the boss, and he works for him. God bless his soul. And then my youngest son, who graduated last year, I think I was about half scared to work with him. He was lucky enough to get a job on the opposite crew. So the three of them fly out here every 2 weeks.
Oh, cool.
And they're working in Cheyenne right now. Like I said, they've been working up the I-25 corridor, drilling for a long time. So, yep, I'm proud. Proud moment. Proud of my daughter. My daughter graduated from high school or college, high school and college. I have 4 children. My daughter's 29, 26-year-old son, 20 and 19. Proud of my daughter. My boys were like me. I was able to skirt my way through 4 years of college, but I wasn't the brightest brick in the pile. I'll be honest with you. My boys are just workers. That's what they love to do for 2 weeks out of the month, and then they hunt, fish, and spend their money for 2 weeks out of the month. And it's rough work. It's dangerous work. Rightly so. The video shows it. The hospital pictures show it. But if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be driving at Tacoma to get up on this hill right now. I wouldn't be sitting in chairs right now because only 25% of the stuff they actually drill is made for gasoline. The rest of it is paint and all the stuff that's in this place. So I thank them every day for the work they do.
Well, I'm glad they're out here. That gives you another
Yeah, my wife.
3 pulls to Colorado.
My wife is already. My boys plan on going a turkey hunting toward all the states in the Midwest next year. They went to South Dakota last year, so my boys got points already in Wyoming. So, yeah, I'm not selling my house. My boys are going to rent my house, so it's kind of cool that they get to take my house and enjoy it. I just hope they don't burn it down. But yeah, my daughter's another one. She's wonderful. She works in IT at a law firm in Charlotte. It's all over the country. She went to school for sociology and psychology, and that's doing IT work. Figure.
Smart girl.
But that's I'm proud of my kids. Like I said, I take it they got some of my work ethic, that they work hard, and that's just the type of person I am. And I haven't spoken about my wife yet. I'm married to her for 28 years. She's a good woman, scared to death. I'll be honest about packing up, not seeing her grandkids or her grandbabies or children again. But she's on board with me, and it's like, hey, if this is what's supposed to happen, this is what's supposed to happen. We'll make ways, and as long as there's a Costco that I can go to, I'm happy, and a Target. So that's just her. She don't work right now. I let her stay at home. She watches little boy at home for somebody else. So, trying to think of me in a nutshell. That's about it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. There's Costco and the Target right next to each other in Superior.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the BOT?
Yeah, you've had a little experience with the lack of air. I hope you make it through this. We're going to get a good blast of wind tonight.
Miranda and them were like, I think they were out there playing with the wind gods, because they're like, I hope it gets blasted. I hope it comes really hard. I'm like, oh, that's great.
75 mile
Yeah.
per hour gusts.
I lived through her. You know what?
Are you staying up here tonight?
Yeah, I'm staying at the Boulder Creek Lodge. Weather doesn't scare me.
Good.
I would live through hurricanes. I think it's true. You know what? If we all watch the media, we all sit in bunkers for the rest of our lives. We're all going to make it.
It's are you retired now, or I mean
December 30th.
Okay, so you could transition pretty quick.
Yeah, I'd have to. Yeah, moving across country, it's going to take a little bit, but yeah, just with the housing.
Help you.
Yeah, with I've looked at housing around here. It's fairly.
Did you find any?
No, and I'll be honest, I'm not going house poor. I just I've set myself up to this point in my career and my life that me and my wife can enjoy what we got right now, and I'm not going backwards just to, just to suffice a position. I think my worth is well worth what you get. And, I think I've showed flying out here on my own dime and not asking for anything. I think that shows that I'm serious about it. I'm glad you didn't offer anything. I'm glad that I could show you that I'm willing to put forth that effort, because that shows a lot in my book. Anybody will do something for $1. It's whether you got to put forth the effort yourself to get that $1 back.
Any other questions from the BOT members?
If you do,
Nicole or
just let me
Tanya?
run to the bathroom if you're going to be
Oh, yeah.
long.
No, I'm good.
I think we're there. Do you have any questions for us, or do you need to go to the
Let's
bathroom?
go to the bathroom.
I'm fine with it. Yeah, why don't you run to the bathroom, because we can we want to. Well, just come on back when you're done. It's right down the hall on the
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Want to thank Tony and Colby and Mike online for being here with us today. We appreciate that you've applied to work with us and that you've come here today to.
Yeah, maybe I I can just offer some clarification.
That would be
So
even better.
We have Colby, Alan, Tony Johnson, and Mike Hartzell online, and they are all applicants for officer or sergeant. And I just really want to thank them for coming. I think that means a lot to, it's not just a marshal, we're recruiting for all levels. And it really does mean a lot that you all came here and that, Mike, you're online, and just showing you that there's a commitment across the board from all different positions for this department. And them being here, I think, speaks volumes to that.
You're here.
Definitely. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. So we'll give Dan a minute, and everyone else could take a break if you want, and then
There's more snacks.
give him a chance to ask us questions, and we'll move into executive session.
We have bread here for those in the room that was left, like over donation to the food pantry. So please take bread home with you. It is essential.
We have plenty of trick seats up here.
Yeah, there's 2 who didn't make it. There's 5 total. But they say today I was like, how is it Thursday? I'm having that moment. I was like, I swear it was Sunday yesterday. And Peter's out. He's like, pass on it, so we're covering the front desk, and covering the front desk, and we'll stop away to meet real fast. Just to make sure that we don't have anyone who has expired, anybody doesn't live here anymore. Every year we do an annual audit. It takes a ton of time, so free Peter up to do that at home. It takes a ton of time. No, not really. But we're able to assess like how we will still have one who should have one, how we will turn 18, 21 should have switched. It gives you that kind of data. And a lot of times you have like one home that had multiple renters, that makes 20 eco-passes associated. And so that's what kind of the cleanup is, like, who actually lives there? Yeah. And who doesn't, unfortunately, because you're not paying into the system, who would deactivate people.
Yeah. How often do we do these audits?
And I did it last year. Happy to share. Happy to share the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was like, I'll cover the front desk.
Yeah.
But you do lose, it's so hard, the front desk is like,
That's why.
I was like, you get it, stop, that one.
No.
To myself and others.
He makes it look easy.
Yeah.
Robin was saying these were so hard. Well, they were frozen. They were so hard. God, they're hard as
Yeah, I mean, they had.
Finally picked one up. I was like, well,
He thought he could leave with us.
Now go back. You will get kicked out here momentarily.
He's got. What do you ask? Any questions for us? He's gonna
Yeah.
say no.
Right? He's gone through it. We have kept him for 3.5 hours every day.
Wow.
Running over, so right into law enforcement, and law enforcement was, and then he Hi, I started as Polly at 7 a.m. this morning.
Look,
Four guys all bleeding together.
and then he was here with public at 4. I was here for a while. He's been talking to people.
And then went straight from Polly to site. Then came back here, met with Rita, and came to speak green.
I met with Rita.
A little bit, it's been
On the verge of passing out myself.
a long 2 weeks. So that's okay. I can sleep when I'm dead.
Dan, so now we're just going to ask if you have any questions for us. And,
Yeah.
and then we'll excuse you.
What do you guys see that you want as a marshal?
Just,
do
you
you
might
think-
say it into the mic for the folks that might.
What do you guys see as a board of trustees that you want in a marshal? Because ultimately, I said this, ultimately, I was asked this question last night. Ultimately, I'm only going to go out there as a marshal and enforce what you expect me to enforce. If you don't want me to worry about it, I'm not out there to just cause trouble.
Yeah.
So I guess, what does the board want from a marshal? Or you foresee a marshal being in this community? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, oh, sorry.
We all have some answers.
Yeah,
probably.
I think we all have our own answer to that, right? I mean, you know, what I'm really looking for is a community partner, someone who will collaborate with the community to make us, to keep us safe, to make sure that people who are in moments of need are served in that moment of need. Someone who's committed to community policing, somebody who's going to work with this board as a member of our little team here, and somebody who's going to be a leader and set an example for residents of the community and how to conduct oneself as part of a society. So that's what I'm really looking for in a town marshal more than any. An enforcement of our code. Enforcement of the law is obviously important. We're not doing anything here, right? If we're passing all sorts of laws and nobody's enforcing them, then our position becomes kind of meaningless, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Right? So
We're all out of a job.
right. So obviously that's important, but I think it's those community values that really matter most to me, and I think that's what's going to keep us together and keep the character of this town what we all love and why we moved here.
So I'd be looking for a commitment. I mean, this is a big move for you. A cost of living is higher here. It's very far away from North Carolina. There's the wind, the cold, the elevation. So I'd want you to take all those factors into consideration seriously and be really committed to this position for the long term. Also, if you were brought on as marshal, I'd want you to look at all sides of issues and not make decisions based on just hearing one side of something. I'd also want you to work on your administration skills as far as writing reports, doing things that aren't, the patrolling hands-on kind of things, because it is an administrative position.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the most important thing I can see is building your team, running your team, getting Miranda out of the policing business, being a good direct report, but running your shop responsibly, and working as a critical member of a relatively small team. I think the work you did in the schools was super important, and I think that makes me light up a lot more than your SWAT experience. The work in the our school is our future. Schools are our future, and I think I'm delighted to hear you have that kind of experience. It's a different culture than where you're coming from. I think you'd like it here, but I also would share what Trustee Blakemore just talked about. And there's some administration that's going to go with it, and that you're starting with a pretty blank slate in terms of policy. So whatever you can bring to the table is going to be some, the policy work to set the groundwork, doing your inventory, building your team, and becoming part of the community, I think are the things that I care most about.
Thank you.
For me, I would say, draw on all your background and experience as a law enforcement officer, and at the same time take this as an opportunity to take your whole life experience and build it into something that is really speaks to your heart. I feel the thing that I've kind of gotten the impression from you the most is that you have a really good, strong heart, and your heart is here and in this endeavor, and that's what I think appeals to me the most, as far as having you be a good fit for the candidate position. And I think that we can do law enforcement much better as an entire nation. And I feel that being a small town like this, we really have an opportunity to show the rest of America how it can be done, and when it's done well and done right, and when it does have a strong element of the heart involved there. And what you were saying about getting people into the room together and squashing the cultural little problems that people are having with each other, I'd like, if you can do that in your own department, you're really going to be the bottom line as far as how conflicts are going to be resolved. When people can't figure out how to work it out, it's going to be you and your team that gets called in. And if you have an established culture of doing that within your own team, I think many of the problems and disputes that can happen here in this town could also be just sorted out if, people could just, even if they had to have a screaming match, that's going to be better than, the kind of things that you see on net heads and on Facebook. It's half the time, or, people getting in Miranda involved and telling their neighbors, complaining to Miranda about something that the neighbor's doing instead of just go talk to their neighbor. And, I think that, I feel that I've heard that from you, that I feel that you will make it your own, and, would, and you'd, I feel that there's a lot of promise, a lot of potential for us to work really well together. So, yeah, I just really appreciated everything you had to say, and I think that not all the answers are clear to us at the moment, but if we do take this step and decide to move forward together, that a lot of that will come to fruition as we discover the path together. So.
Thank you.
The heart, I would say, is just my final thing, is just keep the heart there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Nicole, Tanya?
The only thing else I would add, I agree so much with what everyone has said already. Maybe a little add-on is innovative policing, right? Innovative, just creativity in how we might approach problems. I think that that's fundamentally what sets a lot of leaders apart from your average leader. And so, being able to look at either old problems with new solutions, or not getting stuck necessarily with, well, that's the way I've always done it. As my fellow trustees have articulated, this is a different place and different scenario. And so whoever comes into this position, I'd be looking for, do they also potentially value some sort of innovative and creativity to their role?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah, I feel like policing for some people, something you don't really think about very much, until you need help. And then you're gonna expect and hope that the officers that show up are present and fair and unbiased, and obviously helpful. And really what, police are really here for is to help us, protect us, be community members. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for, is just you and whoever else is on the team, acts like a member of the community, and ultimately, we all have memories of certain officers that, were amazing and we're friends, obviously there's times when you can't be a friend, and you got to be serious. But that's kind of what I'm looking for, is that it's not us and them so much, and more like that someone you can trust and people can talk to you, and without too much judgment or fear of punishment. And that's basically all I'm thinking of right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, appreciate the question, and I think it's exciting for you to come into a situation where you have a blank slate, and you can really create something new. I've been lucky to do that with startup businesses a few times, and new roles like I'm in now with the group I'm with. So it's exciting to have a blank slate. So I'm excited for you, and whoever takes this role, and I think the thing I would most want is that you create a good culture with the NPD, and work to create good relationship, good culture in the NPD and with town staff, and that you personally, or the town marshal personally, works well with Miranda and the rest of the town staff through Miranda. So
Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate your time and amazing endurance these last 2 days, and thanks for staying calm and relaxed and real. So appreciate it.
That's me in a nutshell.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Take the pizza with you. Yeah, okay. If you want a hot pizza, you can get one in town too.
So, might be a little late for that, Tom.
Dang this town.
Dan,
Thanks,
take care.
Dan. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Colby. So,
As nicely as possible.
yeah. Yeah. Can I vote?
Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to, or would I? Can I?
Either way.
I would love to. I move to go into an executive session pursuant to CRS section 24-6-4024 I think, to consider and determine positions and instruct negotiators relative to the chief of police position.
Second.
Second. When you're ready, Miranda. No worries.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore.
Yes.
Thank you. And thanks everyone online. We're going to